This episode of Yesterworld is sponsored by Blue Apron. Stay to the end of the video to hear about my personal experience cooking a meal with Blue Apron. And if you're one of the first 50 people to sign up using my link in the description, you'll save $50 off your first 2 weeks. When taking a ride on the Universal Studios Hollywood Tram Tour, among the sights and experiences that have been present since the early days of the tram tour's operation, one of the most important to the foundation of Universal as a theme park destination is Jaws. And the story of its evolution, much like the film it's based upon, is full of thrills, loss, and having a huge impact on the future. In July of 1964, while Gray Line tour buses had included Universal Studios as part of their tour in the past, Universal decided to capitalize on its popularity with tourists, and the Universal City Studio Tours officially made its debut. And over the years, it would offer more than just a behind-the-scenes look at a working movie studio, as Universal would add unique experiences and shows for visitors. However, starting in the early 70s, an area of the backlot named Singapore Lake, in which the iconic Psycho House loomed in the background and had been used as a filming location for a variety of movies over the years, was transformed into a tram tour experience, in which a storm would be simulated as a demonstration of movie magic, achieved via a smoke and wave machine. And while not the most impressive of the tram tour experiences, it was a fun addition to the tour nonetheless. However, it wouldn't be long before another addition was made that would forever change the course of Universal Studios history.
This is Universal's extraordinary motion picture version of Peter Benchley's best-selling novel, Jaws.
In 1975, Steven Spielberg's Jaws made its monumental debut, quickly becoming the highest-grossing film of all time and the first true example of a summer blockbuster. And unsurprisingly, Universal wanted to capitalize on the film's massive popularity, so work began to bring Jaws to the Universal Studios Tram Tour, and it was decided to use Singapore Lake as the attraction's location, and utilize Bob Matty's ride system originally created for Disneyland's Jungle Cruise, as well as a variation of his sea sled mold for the body of the shark that Bob Matty developed for Jaws the movie. And it wasn't long before Singapore Lake would transform into Jaws Lake, which would include recreated movie props from the film, such as the striped cabanas and iconic billboard, as well as the screen-used orca and Ben Gardner's fishing boat, in which the hole in the ship's side, as seen in the film, necessitated that the prop be supported by wooden frames underneath the water to keep it from sinking. As for the look of the mechanical shark itself, Universal wanted to try to replicate the design as seen on the movie poster, but unfortunately, this produced a laughably cartoonish design nicknamed Carrot Tooth and would look far less menacing than its on-screen counterpart.
Welcome to Universal Studios, where you learn Hollywood secrets.
In April of 1976, the Jaws experience made its debut on the Backlot Tour, in which you would arrive at the lake as the tour guide warned about recent shark sightings, pointing out a fisherman named George out in the water. And suddenly, with a cue from John Williams' iconic score, a dorsal fin would appear and head towards George, who would fall victim to Jaws and meet a very gory end. And using a number of scenes from the film as inspiration, in which Jaws takes bait and rips a dock away from the shore, and the use of yellow barrels to signify his presence. The shark would seem to take bait attached to a yellow barrel, only to pull away the entire pier, causing the tram to tilt forward towards the water's edge. Within moments, the yellow barrel would reappear on the other side of the lake. And then suddenly, as the iconic theme reached its crescendo, Jaws would leap out of the water and attack the tram, starting at the front and making its way to the back of the vehicle, ensuring that everyone on board would get a fantastic view of the infamous shark. But thankfully, you escape unharmed.
Smile, you son of a...
From the first day of opening, the Jaws experience quickly became the highlight of the tram tour, and merchandise would soon flood the shelves of the gift shops, and its popularity and success would pave the way for future big-budget tram tour attractions, such as King Kong Encounter and Earthquake the Big One, ultimately giving Universal the confidence to begin developing plans for a standalone theme park in Florida, in which these three iconic tram tour experiences would get their very own individual rides. However, it wasn't long after Jaws' tram tour attraction debut that the first changes would be implemented into the experience, as within the first year or so, the back row of the shark's top teeth were removed, and in 1979, Jaws was given a much-needed redesign of his overall appearance, and would look more alike to the one featured in Jaws Part 2.
Where are you? I know you're out there.
Over the years, the popularity of Jaws Lake and its attraction would go far beyond just a tram tour experience, as it would also play a role in a variety of television shows and movies, sometimes appearing as a fictional backdrop and other times would incorporate the attraction as a whole.
Is that the shark from Jaws?
Yeah, I believe it is, Lieutenant.
That's the one that they used in the picture?
I think so.
Yeah, that looks different to me.
And while the mid-1980s would see another redesign of the shark, as well as the removal of the second barrel, presumably to keep his final appearance more of a surprise, a refurbishment in the late 1980s began the attraction's most drastic changes, beginning with a complete overhaul of the scene in which Jaws rips the dock apart and putting the primary focus on brand new pyrotechnic effects, in which Jaws would somehow cause a gas station to explode. And while George the Fisherman had a number of wardrobe changes over the years, the attack effect was reworked and moved closer to the right side of the lake. But perhaps the change that hit fans of the attraction the hardest was the removal of the screen-used orca in 1996, much to the dismay of director Steven Spielberg, who would secretly visit the boat and reminisce on the film that launched his career.
I called up the head of the back lot and I said, "What happened to the orca?" He said, "Well, it was just rotting there, so we took an axe and took a couple of chainsaws and we cut it up for timber and we shipped it out." And I went nuts.
And while the 1990s saw the last major redesign of the mechanical shark, during a lengthy overhaul in the year 2000, George the Fisherman was completely removed altogether in favor of an Amity police diver, and the ride's pyrotechnics, which had been shut off in the early 90s presumably due to the gas crisis that had swept across America, were made even bigger and more explosive than ever. And in 2005, the striped cabanas were removed along with Ben Gardner's fishing boat. And sadly, the screen-used movie prop was publicly seen for the last time as having literally been tossed in a dumpster. But Jaws would lose another effect that had been present since the first day of operation, as a 2010 refurbishment saw the removal of the hydraulics behind the tilting bridge effect. And in 2014, it would be replaced by a completely solid roadway, meaning the effect will more than likely never return.
That's great! That's just great!
But at the end of the day, during a time in which screen-based attractions are becoming more prevalent than ever, the various changes to Jaws over the years does little to take away from the overall experience, and hope remains that with any luck, it'll stay that way. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I wanted to take a couple minutes to talk about my experience using Blue Apron, and just to prove how someone like me with practically no cooking experience can make a fantastic meal using Blue Apron, I recorded my entire process. If you're like me, you love a great home-cooked meal, but if you're also like me, you often find yourself relying far too much on the microwave and pre-packaged meals, as having to take the time to research recipes and cookbooks, to going to the store and picking out ingredients, and then worrying about buying too little or too much, and wasting money on what spoils before you can use it. When you have a busy schedule, it's no wonder microwavable meals are such a temptation. But that's where Blue Apron comes in, as when picking the two-person plan and selecting the types of foods I like to eat, including vegetarian options, which is great if you're like me and in a relationship where one of you is a vegetarian and the other is not. I was given 8 different recipes to choose 2 to 3 meals of any combination. But here's where the real convenience of Blue Apron becomes clear, as a package will be delivered right to your door and essentially straight into your kitchen. And inside you'll find the recipes and ingredients for your personally chosen meals, all of which are farm fresh and individually and carefully packaged, including the exact portions you'll need. And you'll also find the perishable items kept nice and frozen within the insulating foil blankets and in between 2 giant packs of ice. An absolute must for people like me who live in a hot climate or can't be home when the package arrives. Now, as someone who loves fish but rarely cooks it for myself, with the help of Blue Apron, I was excited to give it a try. And while the recipe called for jalapenos and peanuts, since I have an intolerance for spicy foods and a dislike of peanuts in recipes, I was able to remove the ingredients without affecting the quality of the meal. And as all of Blue Apron's recipes can be prepared in under 40 minutes, within no time, and I'm not exaggerating, I had a delicious restaurant quality meal that I never thought in a million years I could do myself. So to give Blue Apron a try for yourself and start cooking the meals you've always wanted to but without the hassle, just check out the link in the description to get $50 off your first 2 weeks if you're one of the first 50 viewers to take advantage of the offer. And remember, there's no commitment necessary, and you can skip a month or cancel at any time. So start your cooking journey with Blue Apron today. Thank you all again so much for watching, and if you want to help support the channel, check out my Patreon and shop in the description. And I'll see you next time on Yesterworld.